you. Yep.
Perfect. So the old link works?
It's weird. It's like it duplicated the stream. Now let me check.
Yeah, the most important is that it works. Motherfucker.
I cannot hear you again.
You cannot hear me? What?
Ah, it works now. Yeah. We're broadcasting to the right one now.
You cannot hear me?
I can hear you again.
Okay.
Let me check. Let me just mute the YouTube video. Sec. Vale, ya se ve. ¿No? ¿Puedes entrar en la web y darle al ver el vídeo de YouTube?
Aquí yo estoy escuchando.
Ah, ¿estás ahí?
Sí, en el YouTube está ahí.
Vale, está en el link correcto, ¿verdad? O sea, le has dado al botón de la web y...
Yo le he dado un link que pasaste ya hace unos cuantos días.
Vale, o sea que es el...
¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa, Paradox?
Sí, en YouTube también, en el link de la web también está.
Vale. Cojones.
Sí,
mira, perfecto. Me vale con...
mira.
Vale.
Vale. Ah, fuck.
I'm gonna send a tweet.
Wait. Let me stream to Twitter first.
No, I can send a tweet. Or...
Oh, well, you can send a tweet. Yeah. You're right.
Oh.
Hey, man.
What, man?
You see how professional video I have?
Where?
Should I show you middle finger again?
I mean, you're asking for it, though, so...
We've lost. Oh, fuck. We've lost the streamer. Okay. He's back. We cannot hear you.
Of course, I was mute. Why is it not streaming? Okay, we're back on YouTube. Cool. So, Twitch.
I connected my old Canon camera as a webcam.
Why?
I wanted to buy a because I wanted to. No, because I wanted to buy a webcam, and I've watched a few reviews, and it looks like my 10 years old, actually 15 years, something around 12 years old camera is still better than the webcams you can buy now. So And I was not using it for a few years already, because it's like, who's using normal cameras now?
Normal cameras.
I mean, like, you know, those like the ones that you then have to connect with cable.
With an existing account, Twitter, not this one. No. Let me switch accounts on Twitter. I'm gonna start streaming on Twitter soon. Nah, come on. Log out. Log in. Twitter. Yes. Okay. Got it. So I guess.
What's up, Tamimi? I could hear myself, by the way.
You can?
In someone's speakers. Yeah.
I think it's Fran.
Is it you, Fran?
Okay. You should not hear you anymore.
What's a hangover?
And let's test it. No. Hangovers take only
now I don't hear
a
you.
few hours. So not today. And I'm on diet now, so I can't drink.
I thought that was your. That was the diet.
So, because of the hangover? No. Let me check this Twitch account as well.
Cannot connect my earbuds. Why? I don't know why. This is weird. Let me find an alternative.
Is it not possible in Zoom to do something like not activate the mic unless like it goes over a certain input level? Is that not possible?
What you mean, like you're muted, but when you start speaking, it unmutes automatically?
Yeah, exactly. Because you can hear when I click, like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're pretty good at clicking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I want to avoid, but I don't think you can.
Okay, I think we have a few people already in the waiting room. Let me start admitting people.
I'm just gonna leave you guys for a sec. I'll come back.
Sure. Hello, others that joined. Give us like 1 to maybe 3 minutes to get everything on track. Fran will join in a minute. And let me check because I saw, oh yeah, Kin is already joining as well. Hi, Kin. We're waiting like 1-2 minutes more for Fran.
Always waiting for Fran. Always waiting for Fran.
Thanks to it, he feels like he's important. And that's good.
He is. He's very important. It's important that we make him feel like that he is important.
We got so many people today.
Oh yeah,
Marketing worked well.
good. I saw the announcement trending, at least on my timeline. I think I haven't met most of the folks here except Lucas, you and Fran. We have met Lucas, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Once or twice, yeah, I think. Okay, more people are joining. Hi, Laurent.
Hi, guys. Nice to see you.
So far, for those that watch the live stream, we have 2 guests from Postman. It's Kin and Abhinav. We have also Zoltan that joins us regularly on our meetings. We have Laurent that just joined, I guess you're here because you're representing the MicroRocks, the awesome testing tool that just recently integrated with AsyncAPI. We have Colin from Nuts project, Tom from Ably Realtime, I think. Ably, sorry. So I'm kind of recognizing people. That's good. I'm not that old yet. And we have Fran finally, I think. Can you hear us, Fran?
Ken, sorry, I was going to do something which I consider as important, right? So I'm gonna grab a beer. I know for you, my US fault is too early in the day, but we're finishing here in Europe. So.
And my tea, so at least we have like a beverage to use to toast to.
It's by the way, I don't want to pretend I'm drinking like real beer. Is non-alcoholic beer, so shame on me. But but yeah, I don't want to promote alcohol. So
Yeah, so let me just catch up the intro. So it's our usual public meeting that you can join every second week. Sometimes it's in a time zone for Asia and Pacific. Sometimes it's in the time zone for Americas, which is now. Today it's a special meeting. That's why it's not just available on Zoom, but we also stream live this meeting to our accounts on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, like multi-streaming like crazy. And I'm gonna be a kind of moderator because we have so many different streams. Then I have to like look at the chats and see if there are some questions. And before I pass on to Fran, I forgot to introduce that we also have on the call Jonas, who's AsyncAPI contributor, like strong contributor. And that's it from my side. Fran, on you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the intro, man. So I'm not gonna like be very pompous here about the announcement. I think if all of you already went to the website, you probably have seen it, or if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you've already seen it. So what we're happy to announce today is that we're partnering with Postman, and today we have Abhinav, CEO of Postman, here as well, and Kim Lane. So yeah, so thanks both of you for making it happen. Why so many noise about this announcement, right? It's like, what does it mean, right? We already had like sponsors there, right? Why so many noise about this partnership with Postman? So just wanted to I would like to highlight a few differences. So Postman is not another sponsor. That's why we're using the word partnership, right? So it's a different thing here. And what we're gonna build together, I hope for many years, right, is that so Postman is actually giving us the support and the help that we need to create a team to work full time on AsyncAPI, not just me, not just Lucas, and not just Jonas now, right? So which is kind of unannounced yet, but yeah, not just that, but we're gonna be growing the team. Like we're gonna be hiring like crazy. So stay tuned for that. So we're gonna be hiring lots of engineers, designers, or technical writers. We're gonna be hiring a lot of people. What for, right? That's the question, right? So what for? So Postman is gonna help us build the future of AsyncAPI or making it a reality. And as I said, this is not just a regular contribution or a regular sponsor, let's say, right? It's more than that. We, the three of us here in the call right now, so Jonas, Lucas, and I, we joined Postman recently, right? So we're now working at Postman, but full-time dedicated to AsyncAPI and the success of AsyncAPI, right? So a little bit more details about what's coming, what's the details about the deal and about the agreement here is that Postman doesn't want to own AsyncAPI specifically. So this was discussed a lot of times, like how do we frame this? What are the words that we should be using? So we avoid confusion in people that this is not Postman acquiring AsyncAPI. So don't get scared. This AsyncAPI is still free and will remain free. Free as in freedom, not as in price, right? And this is Lucas. Were you trolling me on the phone? Yeah. So
No, I'm not that kind
okay. So yeah, so that's so I was saying that this is not an acquisitions and what Postman is and as agreed to do now is to host the project into a foundation, and neutral foundation. I don't know, say for instance, Linux Foundation, CNCF, Apache Foundation, something like this, right? We're now talking to different people, to different of these open source software actors, and we'll see where we host the project, right? It's not only our decision; they also want to host the project, so they have something to say, right? And yeah, so that's pretty much that part. Again, the idea here is to make to create a team that's going to be dedicated on working on AsyncAPI full time. We're going to be hiring a lot of engineers, as I said before, and other roles as well. And yeah, I would love to. I was like super excited to share this with you, man, because this was already like burning me from inside. Like I couldn't share it. We've been, I don't know, Abhinav, how long did we join already? Like I think 2 months ago, maybe something like that. You're mute, by the way.
Yeah, maybe about coming close to 3 months. I think, yeah, it's
something like that.
It's everybody's at home, so like my time, schedules are like warped in my mind. It was yesterday, but actually, yeah, maybe 3 months ago. Yeah, it's been some time, and I would echo Fran. We have been like also just keeping it inside, keeping it bottled up to share the news, but. It's a pretty exciting day. We've been big fans of AsyncAPI and the work that the community was doing. Kin has been pivotal, I think, in driving API specifications and the idea of API specifications forward. And Kin and I think met. Kin and I actually go even further back. I think it was 2015 or 2014. Kin probably reached out to you.
I think 2014 we started talking.
Yeah. So we kind of started talking then since about the idea of specifications. So like that is very close to Postman since then. I mean, Kin has officially joined now, but he was in an unofficial advisory capacity since then. So it's great to be working with leaders in the API space. That's what I'm excited about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just to layer on, I mean, for me, this has been such a journey. I mean, Abhinav and I first started talking before even the Open API was Open API. It was back when it was still Swagger, and the importance of stabilizing and putting that spec into the Linux Foundation, and then growing it and seeing what it's grown into. And I remember when I first met Fran, I was working with him and Bruno on API changelog, and I was an advisor there. And when I saw when he proposed and put AsyncAPI out there, I really felt like it was the early days of Swagger, and I felt that same momentum. I felt that same kind of community buy-in that this is needed. This is the next generation of what we're going to be doing for APIs. And then now here in 2020, I really feel like I see the complete picture coming together of Open API, AsyncAPI, and then the binding kind of factor of JSON schema, when it comes to that. And seeing what Postman's become and how Postman's become a full lifecycle API platform, I would say, evolving from that API lifecycle tool to actually a platform, an API platform. I think being able to manage your truth with an Open API, with an Async API, and model and manage all of the objects across it using JSON schema really represents the future of an API platform. But I think for us as API providers, like what we need our toolbox to do, we need it to be, multi-protocol. We need it to be multi-format. We need consistent tooling and services across the API lifecycle to document, manage, and test. And that's what this partnership, reflects for me.
So yeah, I mean, feel free to jump at any time if you have questions. Like this is just another SIG meeting for us. That's why we wanted you to join on Zoom, right, and not just stream it stream it on YouTube or Twitch, right? So like I'm assuming that you have lots of questions, I'm sure. So yeah, feel free to.
First of all, congratulations. I mean,
thank you.
it's always a big step when you have this kind of things. Yes, I mean, I can hear that you're proud. So I think it's very nice. So you said you kind of cooking this for a while. And can you share any plans, roadmaps on this journey? Do you have anything already in pipeline to do together, or of course there's an AsyncAPI roadmap, but does it change or is it any change? Or for example, from Postman side, what does this mean for Postman? You said it's now it's multi-protocol. It's very interesting actually. So if anything you can just fold out, that's I'm curious.
I think I'd let Fran share. I think, on the AsyncAPI side, happy to share, Zoltan, and thanks for asking the question. I mean, I'll share some backstory about it, how Postman has been building up to that, but, I'll let Fran talk about the AsyncAPI stuff.
Yeah, so, I mean, from the AsyncAPI side, nothing changes. I mean, everything changes in the sense of speed, especially, right? Speed and people that will be working on different features. So far, it's been mostly Lucas and I, and also Eva is behind me right now. So she's now working on her own company, so she's not into tech anymore. Luckily for her, she was suffering already. And so yeah, so it's been mostly Lucas and I working full time on this. And you could see that we couldn't cope with everything, right? Like we had lots of stuff to do. This was a monster that was growing faster and faster for just two guys to be working on that. We got the precious help from Jonas on his spare time as well, and this was like super, right? Luckily we had him. And now, so with this partnership, we will be able to actually work on let's say work on all these things that we wanted to do faster, right? And even consider some things that we weren't considering before, because we knew it was too much, and we were discarding them because of this. Now we can do them, right? So for instance, one of the things that we wanted to do is we want to have a more regular calendar, let's say, or schedule for releasing new versions of the spec, right? So right now the spec has been stuck on version 2 on purpose, right? On purpose, because the moment you change something in the spec, it's like a snowball effect, right? Like it goes all the way to all the tooling, and it's like no way. So let's not touch the spec for now. Let's complete the tooling a little bit more, and then we come back to the spec and we iterate, right? But so yeah, so we were just basically doing this, and now we can consider doing it the other way around, which is to have some people like myself, for instance. I'll probably be working on the spec most of the time, and so people can be dedicated on working on tooling and working on storytelling and working on designing user experiences, right? Like user experiences, when I say user experiences, is mostly in our case on the CLI, right? But also on the web. So a good user experience on the CLI. So we've been hearing people feedback for a long time, and people were mostly complaining, let's say, about the CLI user experience. Like you just want to validate an AsyncAPI file, or you just, and it's not that simple as it is right now, and it will be. Or you want to do something as basic as please validate this JSON object against this AsyncAPI definition, and you couldn't as well. It was like it was not supported by us or developed by us. There were some contributions from the community, but it was like weird. It was a little bit weird, right? Like these basic things were not in place. And so yeah, so these things are gonna evolve for sure. We'll also be investing into AsyncAPI Studio, which is what we used to call AsyncAPI Hub. This time a little bit different. So it's going to be more like a UI tool to design event-driven architectures. So, and that will produce that will produce AsyncAPI documents, and we'll connect it to, you will be able to run it locally and connect it to your GitHub account or Bitbucket or GitLab or whatever you use, right? And so this kind of tools for authoring AsyncAPI without having to know AsyncAPI, which is always a pain, having to remember how things are written, and not just to remember, having to learn just for being able to get the value, to get the output of it. It's not a good user experience, right? And also some investments that we'll be discovering soon, like on investment into different products or tools that we're thinking about developing, and that we think that can help the community a lot and make asynchronous APIs more mature, right? So,
well, and I would say, to add, to kind of layer on the not the direct Postman or the direct async API roadmap, for me, as my role as chief evangelist and API evangelist, is I'm looking at 5 and 10 year cycles. And I've been doing this a decade, and I want to make sure that things are in place so that both the Postman roadmap and the async roadmap are free from obstacles, and there's certain nourishing things that are there, down the road. And for Postman, when it comes to, we're GraphQL, Open API, SOAP, that represents a diverse API toolbox to me. And async represents, that laying of that roadmap 5-10 years out is how we're going to do it. And for me, AsyncAPI, the roadmap, really thinking about the growth of Open API and kind of what we're doing there. But as I'm talking with like Loren and Microx folks and thinking about, well, what does the API lifecycle look like? We've got documenting, we've got mocking, we've got testing, we've got all of these API lifecycle stops that are pretty mature and well defined. But then we've got innovative ideas like Microx out there, kind of laying the foundation. Okay, what does this look like for an event and message driven world? And I would say that's the roadmap I'm most concerned about. Is I want to make sure that the future is laid and we're building the infrastructure we need down the road for to make sure everyone's got the specs to deliver on the API lifecycle. But then once everyone's defining the specs, we've got consistent tooling and services that help deliver those stops along the API lifecycle. So that Uber level roadmap, that long-term roadmap, is what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would second, everything that Ken and Fran said. So maybe just on that point, right, Ken? I think there are a lot of lessons from the Open API journey that I think we are seeing at a quantitative level and a qualitative level playing out, among practitioners and companies. From our data, we saw that Open API 2, or I don't know whether it's Swagger or Open API 2, I just always mix them up. It's still, I think there is work to be done to get people to adopt, even, that specification. And I think when Fran and I started talking, right, when, we looked at, like, our shared goal is, towards making async API successful. It's a it's a decade-long journey. Like, I think I heard from I think Red Hat CEO a while ago that technology takes like about 8 years to inflect, to reach a maturity level where everybody wants to adopt it. And I think what I believe Fran, representing the AsyncAPI community, and Postman kind of felt was that we would want to make sure that the AsyncAPI community has the resources to focus on the core goals of their community without worrying about other things that typically fall in the way. Like, I mean, we are all believers of APIs and API first, but reality always comes in the way. So that was, I think, the overall meta level stuff. And Zoltan, we have been actually users of technologies like WebSockets. We've tried out GraphQL internally. Like when we started Postman, there was this big question of there are I mean, two broad categories of APIs, right? Like it's the pub/sub model, and then there is the HTTP kind of model. And interestingly, Postman itself is built for our, we of course use all kinds of APIs, but we very heavily also use asynchronous APIs. So this problem of, managing them, testing them was very kind of close to us. And our own engineers had kind of, hacked things around, like, Postman's own tooling to support this. And we always had like, some custom hack built out, which said, okay, Postman supports WebSockets now, or Newman, which is our open source tool, it supports asynchronous APIs. So we're like, okay, we're kind of coming close to this problem that we ourselves are facing. And then the community feedback was also very, kind of intense. How can we, make calls to asynchronous APIs, because the model, is very different. And we are working now on making sure that we can make that interaction like super easy, and also then connect to also leverage the technologies that the community has adopted at large. That's been Postman's stance since pretty much day one. And in the early days, I think there was a lot of confusion around which spec is going to be adopted. There was Swagger, there was RAML, and then there was OpenAPI, and that makes things very hard to really focus on if you are a downstream. You're impacted by upstream changes. So we kind of had that experience there, and what we felt like was a community standard emerging as the de facto standard, which has best practices embedded, would be great for the community. It'll be, of course, great for Postman, but it's generally great for the community. So in the coming year, there's going to be Postman support for asynchronous APIs. There's going to be support for the AsyncAPI specification. We already have a great template that's now led by Kin on the OpenAPI side. We have kept our format open source. We have kept all the converters open source. We have kept all the tooling open source. So we expect that all of that will continue, and to make sure that I mean, the specification gets adopted at scale. Like there is a journey from defining the specification to having it be adopted at scale, and I think we want to basically play our part in getting there. So I'm pretty excited about all this.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will actually add something as well, which is so we're joining, like I said, we're joining Postman like personally ourselves, right? Not AsyncAPI. We're joining Postman to work on AsyncAPI full time, but that means that AsyncAPI is still there, right? So we're gonna host it on an open source foundation, and that means that we'll need more people from different companies and also individuals who want to contribute to the spec to be part of the let's say the core team, right? Or the more the main team, let's say, contributing full time if possible. So that's the message that I will send from here right now is to other companies is to do the same kind of effort, right? And dedicate at least one person of your team to work on AsyncAPI full time if that's something that is important for your company, of course. And also because that way we can maintain neutrality on AsyncAPI, right? So last thing we want to do here, Abhinav and King included, is that it's seen as Postman is controlling the direction of AsyncAPI. So to make sure that everybody is aware that this is not the intention at all, and that we actually have the opposite intention, is that we want everyone to be involved. So I send this message from here now, like if AsyncAPI is important for you, this is something that that we also be doing together, right? Not just ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and Fran, I mean, I think I would say it. I think we talked about it privately as well. Like, I don't understand the notion of people controlling a specification. Like, that is just like a recipe for disaster for any community. So when Fran told me, like, is that going to happen? I was like, I mean, it's not computing in my head. Like, why would anybody want to, control a specification? Like, I mean, today's world, is I'd say maybe dominated is too strong a word, but developers drive a lot of technology choices. I mean, every company has to compete for their mind share and for their love and attention. And Postman has itself grown up as a bottoms up product, and we care about developers as the first agenda before we think about other things. So I felt like, I mean, again, like, I think it's the community driving the specification actually, means that the specification, is true, and it can be adopted. Like, a company specifying things for the entire community just does not make sense. So I think we came to alignment pretty quickly on that front.
Well, and to kind of echo that, I would say, it's really important right now that we support the specs. So right now, having been part of the group that put the OpenAPI or Swagger into the OpenAPI Foundation, and then been part of the growth for the last 5 years, now's the time to invest more in OpenAPI, where Postman's investing a lot there as well, not to the same level as AsyncAPI, but then JSON schema as well is critical to both of these specs. So really, this is async is a cornerstone. It represents the future, but it's one of the 3 specs right now that are super critical to all of us investing in and making work. Now, Abhinav touched on a little bit on the open source piece, and I know this is near and dear to Fran's heart. This isn't just about the specs. This is about continued investment in the documentation, the testing, the converters, the parsers, the transformers, all of that. Abhinav mentioned all the parts and pieces of the Postman lifecycle that are open source, all the converters, the code generators, and trying to figure out, all right, well, what does that lifecycle look like for the community, and what are the other tools out there? And so I really encourage you. I know Fran and I are going to be spending a lot of time in figuring out what's the ecosystem of open source tooling, how does it fit into the bigger picture, and then how do we share the wealth, the kind of platform that Async has, and spend our time investing in other open source tools and making sure it's kind of spread around the community as equally as possible for the tools that matter the most to the community. So definitely a time for shared investment in all the specs. Definitely shared time for shared investment in the most important open source tooling out there. So this is an async API announcement, but I see this as a wider API specification announcement as well. So.
Yeah, I agree. And thanks for mentioning the support to JSON schema, because yeah, these guys really need support. They need help. And it's JSON schema it's the core of AsyncAPI, I will say, and it's the core of OpenAPI as well. And they are the ones who are suffering from invisibility the most, right? So people are usually sponsoring OpenAPI, AsyncAPI, GraphQL, blah, blah, blah. And nobody cares about JSON schema, and it's the core of many other tools, and actually the core of OpenAPI and AsyncAPI. So yeah, that's another good reminder, King. So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we
booster, I look at this as I try to interpret what you just said. It's like definitely should be a booster for this initiative, isn't that? So boosting of this kind of things. Another question: Do you already have some echoes or anything from this preparation from, for example, other async players like Kafka or others? Is there anything on that side? Confluent, for example.
What do you mean? If we have, sorry, if we have what? Sorry?
I don't know. I'm not following totally closely all the things. Yes, so that's why I might asking stupid questions. So, for example, AsyncAPI or all these things. There are some players here in this space that also forming this thing.
I think at some point we will all have to converge into at some point, right? Like into the same goal, let's say. I think, for instance, you mentioned Confluent because of Kafka, right? And Kafka becoming a huge monster. So I think we will all have to chat at some point and converge in terms of goals. And I think in my head, sorry, in my head, the way I see it is, in the future, the brokers should be talking specifications, right? So, for instance, natively speaking, right? Like, like Kafka should be supporting AsyncAPI natively, and probably not just Kafka, but other brokers, right? I know Solaz, for instance, is it's starting to grow the AsyncAPI support. So Solaz is already on the good direction, I would say. And it's not just because it's AsyncAPI. So even if it's just another spec, like we have the folks at Cloud Events, for instance, doing some also some good work. So if that's enough for you, I think brokers should be supporting Cloud Events or AsyncAPI or both. Because in my opinion, the more we agree into a specific language to describe the information, the more powerful our tools will become, right? And
Yep.
this will enable even new lines of business, not just fixing or getting rid of some pain points, but also opening new, like I said, new lines of business, new opportunities, right? So I would say that in that sense, yeah, at some point we'll have to agree on something, right? Don't know yet. I would love to get there. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome. Thank you.
Before we get more questions from people on Zoom, I just like to remind people watching the stream, and because we have like almost 50 people out there, so please don't forget, you can also ask questions in the chat and I'll pass them on for free. So it's a good opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
So yeah, don't feel ashamed of asking. Yeah. So before we get a question, something, just to reinforce what's the goal of AsyncAPI, right? So some people might never heard about the goal explicitly, but and some have heard, but I love to remind it that our goal since the beginning is to make asynchronous APIs or event-driven architectures, or both, I will say, as successful and mature as REST APIs, right? So right now, we have tons of tooling, and we have specs as well, like OpenAPI for REST APIs. It's very easy to create a new REST API. You have lots of tools, services to manage your REST API. But on the contrary, in terms of asynchronous APIs or event-driven architectures, we're starting to see now some light, right? Like we're starting to see some development into that same direction, right? So yeah. So I think let's not forget about it. Like this is the actual goal of all of this, right? And that means tooling, not only spec, right? That means a lot of tools, lots. So yeah, I recall a conversation with Kian, one of them, right? We were coming to the conclusion like, what's tooling? What's a spec without tooling, right? It's nothing, right? So what do you want a spec for if you don't have tools to use it? Is it just for you to make you feel smarter than others because you wrote a spec? Right? We don't want that. We're not smarter than anyone else. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw firsthand how, I mean, one of the challenges I'm trying to figure out with the community and open API community is how do we convince folks to switch from Swagger 2.0 to open API 3? And the lack of core tooling support is one of the things that I identified as being the biggest point of friction for folks. So there's benefits to switching to Open API 3. There's definitely, the componentization. There's a lot of features, but it was just too cumbersome for folks to make the switch. And so that core tooling adoption, I think, is a principle of AsyncAPI that I think is pretty critical. And Fran's been pretty adamant about it. The parsers, the generators, the core tooling is essential to making this work, and it's got to keep up with the spec, and it's got to really help reduce friction for folks. And Fran said it really well one time for me is, AsyncAPI is just a config file for most people. That's how they're going to see it. And that's how I see Open API most of the time. Not everyone loves handcrafting the spec like I do. And most people just see it as a config file. So that tooling is critical to that. And it's critical to the forward motion that we have. So I think that's one I'm looking forward to now that this is out. Like that's kind of, I would say, JSON schema support is kind of the next big thing. Is how do we really embrace the JSON schema community, get them the support they need, both from the async side as well as the open API side. But then along with that is, all right, what's the tooling? What's the state of tooling in the situation? And the core tooling, the parsers, generators, docs. But then what's each of those rings out, the testing, the mocking, and the other parts of that. And what do the service providers look like? And I really think that's an important thing for us to look at is what is the commercial, what is the open source tooling, and helping really foster an environment and invest in an environment that everyone can compete, but everyone can also work together around the spec. And that's kind of our common unifying factor. So this is the open source part and the JSON schema part. I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us to do, but this is the kind of base for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you put it earlier also. I think, and also when the whole Open API or Swagger journey started, I think the most important here is this synergy when the spec, the tooling, and the life cycle works together. So that was the big game changer for this one, yes. So when you just look at Open API or AsyncAPI, as you just put it that way, it's just a config. But it comes to power from a commercial point of view, for example, when it comes to, having a more effective development life cycle or everything, is that when you get the tooling with it. Yes, before we had the similar things before, but when the whole things comes into balance, then comes the power. So I think you just put that. So when we realize the life cycle and we tune for example, the learnings from the Open API life cycle to the AsyncAPI life cycle, is that same or similar or different, or what are the differences? And then you can put the tooling that. Then it's getting the commercialization. I think because there's also hype around event-driven architectures right now, and there's a lot of flows with it. And when I met AsyncAPI first, I'm working as an architect with big corporations and enterprises, and I see the flow as we did with SOA, and we did also with the early adaptation of OpenAPI or Swagger. Yes, but but this is also a driver. So if you have an early stage like now we have an early stage that can actually mitigate or kind of help this hype to make that too much errors. So that's the most important things. And then I hope that the investment and all these things, that's why I'm listening, and then you just reassuring and we just reiterating right now. That's the roadmap where this balance is keeping in in pace. Yes, as you just put that. Okay, it's not about the API version or the async API version. It's about how the tooling can bring up. Like, yeah, I think that's where we are heading, and it's really exciting. So that's
Zoltan, one thing I would add from our experience, right, and maybe something that the community is already seeing. So basically, specifications, tools, and people kind of co-evolve in these feedback loop cycles. When we first put Postman out, we just didn't know what will happen. Basically, it was out and people started using it, and then more and more kind of things started happening. And the interesting thing I think about specifications, kind of is that of course you need the tools and then you need adoption to get those feedback cycles kind of going. I think the interesting thing at this point in time is going to be like a specification confers a lot of power, and the challenge, right, is like how is that power going to be used, So when we look at designing the product, and I'm sure that's going to be reflected in the tools that the community builds, is like, yeah, we're kind of doing all this work, specifying things, and taking in that input and the time and energy from people to build out a specification is important because it has all of these benefits. But those benefits, I think, tools are typically seen as an accelerant of like, okay, whatever the specification does, let's make that happen. Sometimes we have seen that even the counter stance, like let's not give all of that power, because sometimes a very powerful tool in the hands of a misinformed committee or a person can do kind of more harm. In that case, sometimes it's better to actually not have like, you don't want your tools and these things to become dictators, right, at some point. So I think that's an interesting observation that I've had in the evolution of like API companies and API tools, and companies which land too much on we're going to give you all of this power and give you all of this like magical things. Eventually developers end up resisting that because it doesn't align with like their goals. I think Kin and I have talked about this, like what is the right balance between and what is the right composition of tools, to kind of bring the specification to reality and also get it adopted by people. So that's been my stance, and it's it'll be interesting to see what the community kind of comes up.
Yeah, actually, the way I see it is in my head is hopefully at some point nobody knows or nobody is using AsyncAPI, right? Hopefully we reach that point where nobody needs a spec or nobody needs to write that spec or be aware that they're using the spec. Like everything is so transparent for them that the spec is there behind the scenes, but you don't even notice it, right? Same for instance, you use HTTP every day, right? To visit the website, but and you might type HTTP : blah blah blah. But TCP is behind the scenes, and most people don't know, right? And why will you need to know how TCP works? You don't care. The tooling, in this case, the browser, it's abstracting this for you, right? And everything is abstracted, so you don't need to care about it. Or whenever you want to compose a new document, a PDF document, you have tools to edit the documents, to create new ones, blah, blah, to manage it, to manipulate it. You don't have to go and write in PDF format text, right? Like adding all the layers, text here in this position, here and there. No, I mean, that's crazy. Nobody wants to build a PDF document like this. I mean, nobody. There will be people for sure, but but my point is that to make it really powerful is you need to abstract these things out, right? Like these are not visible, and eventually, hopefully, AsyncAPI is invisible in this sense, right? Like nobody needs to know that they're using AsyncAPI because the whole tool ecosystem that they're using, it's using AsyncAPI or it's using specs behind the scenes. But it's like this, it's behind the scenes. You don't even notice, right? How we're gonna achieve this, I have no idea, right? I have lots of ideas, but I have no idea how we're gonna make it work, right? Because it's impossible. It doesn't depend on a single person or company, right? It depends on the whole world. So this is close to be chaotic, right? So
Yes.
so yeah, but yeah, in my opinion, this will be like transparent, right? Or not transparent, actually opaque. So people don't need to know that they're using AsyncAPI, right?
Definitely visionary.
So yeah, you can get this tagline like hopefully nobody uses AsyncAPI anymore.
Way to sell it, Fran. Way to sell it. Luckily, we have a marketing team that's going to step in and help us.
It's about
I'm gonna
adaptation,
kill
guys.
me.
Yeah, maybe that's not the right sentence you just said, but it's about adaptation, isn't that? I mean, yeah, you know what you want. I know what you mean. I think
Yeah.
it's where we turn back again to Kim. It's the crucial point here is the life cycle and how this works with the developer activities and the developer activities or any kind of activities. How you put it into the tooling, as you call it. Yes, how adapters or others can use the standard way of working with asynchronous pub sub type things through this specification or through the tooling that it makes it seamless. I think that's the whole point. That's when you have seamless things. So it's not like, and yeah.
Seamless and shared. I would say the one lesson from SOA is like, you can't just dictate what the life cycles can be, what are all the tools are going to be and have the governance. This has to be a community driven. And that's really what I learned fighting all of the SOA people with Swagger and evolving that is they're like, haven't we done this before? Like, and it didn't work, it's like, well, wait, this is a much more community diverse, fragmented. Yes. But it's more of a shared collective vision of how you move forward the life cycle, and one that comes and goes. Some tools are here one day and they're dominating, and the next day they fall into the background because they weren't actually doing what they should do and achieving that seamless vision that Fran was just talking about. So I really see that as being the future. Is it's got to be a shared collective vision. It's got to be a mix of commercial and open source tools. And with that, the specs at the heart that really drive that, but that momentum of the API factory floor that gets us all moving forward in concert is made up of many little parts and pieces of commercial and open source software, but all unified around the spec. And I think that's our common language, our common vocabulary. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Lucas, do we have questions? No?
No, I have just question to people. Nobody asked, even one single person didn't ask about the governance model, like that they have some doubts now because of the current governance model.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, it's good.
Is it?
Well, I'm going to speak to this because this is near and dear to my heart, and I know we're all in alignment. Abhinav and Fran and I, and honestly, like we're working on cleaning up and learning the lessons from this in OpenAPI right now. So there's I thoroughly encourage you with your organization convinced to join the OpenAPI as well as a member and get involved because there's a shift in the landscape, bringing in a lot more new voices into the OAI to kind of shift the tone. And I would say move the OpenAPI from a kind of a defensive position, because when we put it into the Linux Foundation and created the OAI, it was very much to defend the spec against several acquisition or suitors that were wanting to acquire it and lock up its vision, kind of what Abhinav said, and is unheard of. And and I would say while that we averted that, there was still enough fragmentation with the name Swagger. What is the tooling? What is the spec? There wasn't enough education about what is the difference between Swagger and OpenAPI. Like I said earlier, the tooling wasn't there, the core tooling to help keep pace with generating and converting and parsing. And so I learned a lot through all of that. I learned a lot. I've learned a lot working with the OAI over the last 5 years. I'm learning a lot as we try to course correct this ship, the OAI, and in the Linux Foundation. And so I'm hoping to take all of those lessons and work with Fran to to find the right home, to make sure not only do we put it in the right place, whether it's Linux, whether it's Apache, whether it's CNCF, you know, do our work to figure out, okay, here's the right home, but then what does that mean? What goes in there? What's, you know, the core tooling being part of it, the spec being part of it. And then quickly going, you know, as we talked about, what is the relationship with OAI and JSON schema, and figuring out that relationship because they're all interdependent. And then quickly get to work on the open source tools, even not just the core tooling, but the lifecycle, the rest of it. And so we've learned a lot, and there was some bad moves made in putting Swagger into the Linux Foundation. We didn't see how big it would grow and how big of a scope it would be used, and that the tooling was needed. We didn't see some of the industry level specs. I mean, right after this, I'm jumping on a call with the Travel Alliance, or International Travel Alliance. So it's the airline operators trying to reinvent themselves, and they're doing it by creating an open API spec for the travel industry. And so healthcare is doing that right now. We've all seen the banking. So there's several missteps that we made with Swagger putting it into the open API. I would say the first is the name was the biggest confusing part, is why it changed names. But I think how you structure the governance organization, the relationship to the core tooling, the relationship to the wider, not just the core, but the open source tooling, the relationship with the API service providers, the commercial offerings, the OAI, unless you're a member, really doesn't engage with you as a service provider in the space. So we're looking at changing a lot of these things in the OAI, but then really take all those learnings and make sure that we do this as wisely as possible, what we've learned when it comes to async. And then similarly invest in JSON schema to try to make sure that community has what it needs as well. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we've learned a lot, I think, from the open API journey.
Yeah, I agree. And also I will say that from these learnings from OAI, that's why we decided to include parsers, the generator, you know, all this stuff, all this core tooling along with the spec, right? So whenever we decide to work on the spec, we also decide to work on the core tooling because we thought it was key, right? We know that there are other companies implementing their own tooling for parsing AsyncAPI, and that's fine. For instance, MuleSoft is doing their own parser, and so it's actually a really good parser. It's performing better than our parser right now. So it's really good. But we should provide this. I mean, MuleSoft developed this parser because it's good for them, but most probably the rest of the companies wanting to use AsyncAPI for their services don't want to implement a parser themselves, right? Because that's going to be a pain. And if they do, this is what's happening with OpenAPI right now, right? If they do, the most common thing that happens is that implementations are incomplete, are good enough for them, and that's it. Or that's what King was saying, like it's fragmented as well, right? In terms of tooling, it's fragmented. You find like tens of parsers and tens of generators for generating code and documentation. Some have these features, some others have these other features, but it's really complicated to make them work, or to make them work together, even though they have the spec in common, which is funny, right? It's really hard to make or to get something that is really complete, right? And I think honestly, I don't. Some people see some business there as well. Like, okay, so we create the AsyncAPI parser and the AsyncAPI generator, and this will be the best one that you can choose. We place a commercial offering here and there, and we can make money, right? But again, the goal of AsyncAPI is not to make money with this, right? Is the goal of AsyncAPI is to change the landscape of our asynchronous APIs and event-driven architectures. because that will enable other businesses and other things that we will be able to do, right? In my opinion, thinking that we can make some bucks just selling commercial support or something to one of the core tools, it's nothing compared to what we can enable by opening, let's say, by opening the core tooling to everyone, right? For everyone to contribute and to unify it somehow, right? Like we get to work all of us together. We get to work into a single parser, which is the official parser if you want. This is the official generator. It doesn't have what you need. Okay, so you can implement that feature, but you don't have to re-implement the whole thing from scratch just for yourself, right? And collaborate in a single place. If you want to create your own parser, that's totally fine as well. Like, we're not saying people should not be doing that. Actually, at some point, what happened to us is that by looking at what others were doing, we were incorporating some features into our parser as well, right? So this is also good. I'm not saying this should stop, right? But people should have at least the official version of the tooling, of the core tooling, to use it and to build their businesses from this, right? Like Ably, for instance, is doing. So Ably's business is not for sure to parse AsyncAPI documents, right? It's to offer other features, other value to their customers, right? Parsing AsyncAPI documents is just one step to provide this value, right? And we shouldn't be putting, or they shouldn't be putting a lot of time and effort into developing that piece. This will be just something that they get for free, right? Like or almost for free. That's it, right? So yeah, so I think that's, to me, that's a lesson that we should learn from OpenAPI. Having the core tooling together with the spec, right? It shouldn't be separate.
So important.
Yeah. And as Lucas said, so what's the governance model? What's the governance model? I don't know. This is something that we'll have to figure out once we go to a foundation. But for sure, we want to have these things together. We want to make things as seamless as and as that's, I don't know how to frame this in English, but so we want to avoid company interests from blocking the development of AsyncAPI and the tooling, right? So this will be, we should find a way to avoid that, basically.
Well, and I think that's another level of the learnings is it's not just you think how a company is going to come in and dominate, or all roads lead to their commercial offerings that we've seen so much in open source. There's many other tactics in slowing, stopping a vote. There's inaction can sometimes be just as damaging as action. And so Fran and I have spent a lot of time thinking about this. We meet each week, and we've been complaining about a lot of things for long before this happened. And so we're really going to put a lot of thought into how we approach this and put in, what's the governance model going to look like around it, and really try to drive conversations in a similar way when it comes to OpenAPI and JSON schema, but really focus on the community model and the community having the voice, but then the open source tooling, as well as the commercial offerings, and what does those layers of voice look like in driving forward these specs, and all the way to the roadmap and extending the specs. Overlays is something that's on the table with OpenAPI right now. So there's a lot of ways that these voices can drive the spec, and the key part is that we're all kind of in motion and moving at the same speed, and that's really difficult to do at a community level. So that governance model has to speak to that. And so Fran's been really good at and Lucas as well, in the transparency of their model, like the money behind it, how they do what they do, everything they're super transparent about. And I think that's going to be, transferred into the governance model for this. And so we just got a lot of planning to do, a lot of research on each of the organizations, talking to other groups who are in the CNCF, other groups, who are in the Apache Foundation, and gather learnings like we've learned from the Open API. And I've already had a few conversations with other Linux Foundation organizations. And so take all of that and then try to find, the best balance that we can when it comes to the governance model. And I think the plan is here in the first quarter. This is the work we're going to do the first quarter of 2021 is move the governance model forward. So.
Yeah.
And let me jump in now because it's 5 past whatever time zone you're in. I guess that in Americas, you're just starting, so you probably have new meetings. So I would say last question, and let's finish and let Americas work and Europe celebrate. Any
That's how
last
it works,
questions?
right?
That's how it works.
So just remember, you can also ask questions offline on so many different channels that we have. Any final words from anyone?
From you, maybe. You haven't spoken too much.
From me, thank you for joining.
No, come on. I actually want you to share your thoughts on governance models and what's your opinion on that area.
So we don't want Americas to continue working, right?
No.
For me, that's the most important. So that with this partnership with Postman, that we can now focus on those important things, going to a foundation and working on open governance model, because that's this thinking about open collective, how much money left, how much money we have, how we're running, do we still have at least 1 month or not? So we don't have this problem anymore. And now we can focus on those most important things to really boost development and enabling other companies to join. Because if we go to Open Foundation and we have open governance model that others can influence as well, then what's stopping you from joining and working with us, especially on those core tools that Fran mentioned and Kim as well.
And if you need a visual, some sort of just sample of what this boost is going to be like, from Postman, just look at our microphones. We all three have microphones. So that's the type of, not just boost and amplification of the async specification, but also the quality. It's like the quality and the smoothness of it. So yeah, just a little taste of what's to come.
Yeah, but look at the CEO.
more practical.
More practical.
I do have one. I should I didn't set it up because I do have one.
So that's actually next level. I do have one, but I don't use it.
I
flashing off microphones. I'm not using it.
Only needed, in special circumstances.
You just don't know how sexy your voice gets when you use them.
Well, that's a good point.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate everyone's time today. This is great. I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Just last word. Very exciting news. Thanks. So and really congratulations again. And I think it makes excites. I hope it excites the community also, and it creates that boost we talk about. So let's just do that.
Yeah.
Let's just boost this to the next level, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
Good.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
See you in the next
everyone.
meeting.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.